will do so by doing what? Right, so we will carry over the negative one to become what? To become positive one. So we'll be left with, on the left hand side, x plus 3 all squared equals 1. And then continuing down, what would we do next? Take the square root of both sides. When we take the both sides of x plus 3 all squared, we'll be left with what? X plus 3 and it will be equal to the square root of 1, right? Alright, now let us remember that when we take the square root of any number, the answer can be positive or negative, right? So we're going to do, alright, let's just carry over the 3 first. By carrying over the 3, we will get x equals root 1 minus 3, right? And then we will say that x equals, what is the square root of 1? The square root of 1 is 1. And we know when you take, right, and when we take the square root of a number, it can either be positive or negative. So we will say x equals plus or minus 1 minus 3, right? And then we can separate them. So we can say x equals 1 minus 3 or x equals negative 1 minus 3. 1 minus 3 equals negative 2. And negative 1 minus 3 equals minus 4. So the solutions to this problem is or are x equals negative 2 and negative 4. Right? This can also point us to a fourth way of solving quadratics. As was asked earlier, we use 3 major ways, as was said, the quadratic formula, factorization, and completing the square. But you can also find the solution of quadratics using graphs, which we will look at briefly as well. So the solutions of a quadratic is represented at the point where the parabola cuts the x-axis. And we will see that in a few. But just to give you a little hint into what we'll be going into, we'll be looking at the graph of the quadratic formula, and we'll be learning how to find the solutions of the formula from the graph. So instead of factorizing using the formula or completing the square, if we are given the graph of a function, we can find a quadratic function, that is, we can find the solution of that function by looking for the points at which the parabola cuts the x-axis. So that is why we have the solution being x equal to. So we're saying that the solution to the graph is where x is equal to negative 2 and where x is equal to negative 4. So we would see our parabola looking something like this. We know the graph will cut the the x-axis right here and right here. So we can say that our parabola would look something like that. Of course, you'd have to plot a couple points to get like these areas. I'm going to put them in red. And as I said before, we will look at that in brief detail shortly. But you can bear that in mind. All right. So I'm going to erase it because I don't want it to confuse me. So going on to the questions that we did just now, we have p squared plus 14p minus 38. I'm going to write that on the whiteboard. P squared plus 14p minus 32 equals 0. Now, by completing the square, what would we do first? You know what to write if you don't know how to explain it. In the bracket, we'll have p plus 7, and we got 7 because 7 is half of 14, which is the b value, all squared minus 32. When we square the 7, we get 49. This is equal to 0. So we'll be left to, yes, yes, we are. All right, so when we simplify this, we'll get p plus 7 all squared minus 87. That's equal to 0. In the question? Thank you. All right. So now we can find the solutions to this equation by, as it is already done, equating to 0. So continuing with the process, by making p the subject, the first thing we need to do is what? So we'll carry over our negative 87, which will become positive 87. So we'll be left with p plus 7 all squared equals 87. And then what? We're going to find the square root on both sides. So when we take root of p plus 7 all squared, you'll get so we'll have p plus 7 and it will be equal to root 87. And then we can carry over the 7, the positive 7 to get negative 7. So it's going to be p equals root 87 minus 7. Right. Well, we haven't removed the square root sign as yet, so we wouldn't get the plus or minus. All right, so now we'll say P equals plus or minus 9.327 minus 7. So we can say P equals 9.327 minus 7, or P equals negative 9.327 minus 7. Here we'll be left with let's do the right hand side first since we're already there. Negative 16.327, and then over here we'll be left with 2.27. So here are our two quadratics. The first one, which we solved, and then the second one, which we also solved. All right, before we do the third question, I want to just go through this content with you for those of you who might not fully understand how we derive what we did when we are completing the square. Here is a little explanation that will help. So completing the square actually means taking a quadratic equation and expressing it in this general form. So the general form of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c, right? By completing the square, we will take this formula and express it in the form a times x plus d all squared plus e. Now, the simple explanation of what d is b divided by 2a. And we know that a is the coefficient of x squared. And e is c minus b squared all over 4a. And we're going to apply this now. So let me copy this to the whiteboard. It's not going to give me that. I'm going to screenshot it. Just a moment. TJ, you can't drag it here like that. It's out in my recording. AJ, don't drag it here. Please bear with me a moment, guys. I'm trying to get it on the whiteboard so we can. Right, there it is. So, taking for example this question that we had in the earlier session, that's this one. So it's v squared. I'm going to write it because the whiteboard is not getting it. V squared plus 6v minus 49 equals 0. Let's just identify our A, B, and C values. What are our A values? What is our A value? Or A value is, remember A is the coefficient of the squared variable. So the coefficient of V squared would be what? The coefficient of V squared here is what, guys? It would be 1, right? Because V is being multiplied by 1. The coefficient of B here is what? No, it's actually 6V. Sorry. Here it should be 6V. So the B value here would be 6. And then the C value here is what? C equals negative 14. Now we can work out what our D is. Remembering, I'm going to write it in another color. Remembering that D equals B over 2A. What is B again? 6. And what is A? 1. So it's going to be 6 over 2 times 1. 6 over 2 times 1 equals what? 6 over 2. And 6 over 2 as a whole number is 3, because 6 over 2 is the same thing as 6 divided by 2. And then E equals B squared over 4A. What is B again? Let me write E in another color. So E equals C minus B squared. No, this is the same completing the square, but I'm showing you how we derive the different parts of it. What I showed you was actually like a cheat kind of a way of doing it, but this is showing you the actual concept of what you did when you do the cheat, right? The half of the B value and those things, yes. All right. So we said E equals C minus B squared over 4A. What is the value of C in this question again? Minus 49 minus, what is B squared? All right, so B is 6, so it would be 6 squared over 4. What is A? 1. 4 times 1. All right, let us simplify what we have here. So we would be left with negative 49 minus, what is 6 squared? 6 squared equals 36, and 4 times 1 is 4. So when we reach to this stage now, most of us should be able to just punch in negative 49 minus 36 divided by 4. What answer do we get when we work this out? Alright, so we end up with negative 49 minus 9, because 36 divided by 4 is 9, and then we would end up with negative 58, right? So then what we just work out now, is just the just the values that we need to put into the equation. So now, taking all of that, we are going to complete the square of v squared plus 6v minus 49. So I'm going to write it back down here. V squared plus 6v minus 49 equals 0. And we said that we're writing it in the format a times x plus d all squared plus e. So what is a in this problem? A is, remember now, a is the coefficient of the squared variable. So what is the value of a here? 1. So we'd have 1, and then we're putting back our variable. In this case, our variable is v, and it's gonna be plus d. What value did we get for d down here? What value did we get for d? Remember, this was the value for d. We worked it out before we started the question. So the value of d is positive 3. So it would be plus 3. What if d were negative? What if the 3 was negative? What would we end up with in here? We would end up with v minus 3. Very good. So since the d value here is positive 3, we end up with 1 open bracket v plus 3 all squared, right? Now we need to add our e value plus e. Now we had worked out our e value down here, and we got what? We got negative 58. So it would be plus negative 58 equals 0. And to simplify this, we will have 1 times v, 1, v plus 3 all squared minus 58. Because positive times negative gives what? Negative. So there we have it. Over here is kind of a rougher bubble. I like to use the rainbow to just separate it so we don't get confused. And then to the left is the application of what we worked out. We are now going to see the value of this method, because we are going to be working. So a while ago we were working with situations in which a is equal to 1. But there are situations in which a can be greater than 1. So we want to be looking at those situations. I'm just going to paste back this. All right, so take for example this question. 2x squared plus 8x minus 10. right? If we wanted to solve this question by completing the square, one of the things that we must notice is that the coefficient of x squared is no longer 1, right? So by using our original method, we would have said that we factorize, or we factor out a common factor from this. A common factor for 2, 8, and 10 would be what? What's the lowest common factor of 2, 8, and 10? 2. Lowest factor of 2, 8, and 10 is 2. So we factor out the 2, put our open bracket, then we follow our regular procedure. But before we get there, so having factored out 2 from 2x squared, we'll be left with x squared, right? And having factored out plus 2 from 8x, we'll be left with what? 8x divided by 2 is? Alright, yes, 4x. Let me take another approach to this by showing you the previous step to this. So the previous step would have been having a bracket and let's say 2x squared divided by 2 plus 8x divided by 2 minus 10 divided by 2. So we're showing that we're factoring out the 2. So the 2 must be factored out in front. Right? Now we need to simplify. So when we divide 2x squared by 2, we get x squared. So we're putting back our 2 outside the bracket, and we're going to be left with x squared. 8x divided by 2, as was said by your classmates, is 4x. And then 10 divided by 2 would be 5. Alright, so now keeping our 2 outside, always remember to follow the numerator 2. I'm going to use these square brackets, and then we need our open bracket. So what we're going to do now, we're going to factor what is inside as you were doing when the coefficient of x was 1. Right? So in our regular factorization, we would take x, right? Plus half of the coefficient of b, which is 2. This is all squared. Minus 5 minus the square of the half, which is 4, right? Putting that in a bracket, big bracket. So this will leave us with 2 open bracket x plus 2 all squared minus 5 minus 4 equals negative 9. And then here we will use, so we will take this and multiply the 9. This 2 multiply the 9. You still keep the 2 that is factored out, so it would still be 2 outside the bracket times x plus 2 all squared, but instead of having negative 9, we will have negative 18. And we know how to solve this by equating to 0. We don't have to go through that, right? Can you go ahead and equate to 0 and solve for me and let me know your answers? So I'll give you 2 minutes to equate to 0 and solve. Then you will let me know your answers. I'm going to return to it. What aspect do you want to see? What aspect do you want to see? Yes, it's the same completing the square, except that instead of having a equaling 1, we have a being greater than 1. So that's why we factor out the um, the lowest common factor of the equation to get a to equal to 1, as we did here. So we haven't applied this as yet. This part that we just learned about how to get the half of the b and such like that, we haven't done it that way as yet. We will shortly. But all I want you to do is to equate this part of it to 0 and find the values of x. So that's what you're doing now. Yes, that's the part where you equate it to 0. Yes, that's what it is indicating. Because it's the shortcut method, there is really no explanation, but you are going to see it when we use the procedural method. So after we do this one, I'm going to use the actual procedure so you can see why you have to put back the 2 up there. All right, let us equate. You're not sure if you know how to equate it to 0 and solve? That's what you're saying? Oh, okay. Just let me know when you're ready to proceed, and I would like to hear from everybody so I don't leave anybody behind. So I'm gonna give you like another minute, and then we'll do it together and see what you were not getting right. You are solving for the values of x by equating this part. So we don't do this part of the solution, or we just need to know what the values of x are. So you will do that by equating to 0. All right, let's go together now. So we said that we're down to 2, 2 times x plus 2 cos now we need to make x the subject. It is usually easier to get rid of addition and subtraction before you get rid of multiplication. So looking at it, the most unattached thing has to be the constant, because the constant is not changing under any circumstances. So the constant here is what? Negative 18, because you know the constant is also the c value. And by eliminating negative 18 on the left hand side, when it goes over to the right hand side, what will it become? Positive 18. So that will leave us with 2 times x plus 2 all squared equals positive 18. And then what's the next thing that we can get rid of easily? The 2. What is the 2 doing here? Multiplying. So to get rid of it, we will divide both sides by 2, which will leave us with, on the left hand side, x plus 2 all squared equals 18 divided by 2 is 9. And then the next thing you want to do is what? Take the square root of both sides to get rid of the square sign. So we take the square root of x plus 2 all squared, we'll be left with x plus 2, and that will equal to the square root of 9. All right. So we can say it is so we can say x plus 2 equals to, but anytime you take the square root, the answer can be positive or it can be negative. So the square root of 9 equals plus or minus 3, or we say positive or negative 3. That's what that sign symbolizes. All right. Now we need to get rid of something else before x can be by itself. What is that? The 2. So by getting rid of the positive 2, what will we get on the right hand side? So it'll be plus or minus 3 minus 2. So then we can say x equals 3 minus 2, or x equals negative 3 minus 2. 3 minus 2 equals 1, or negative 3 minus 2 equals minus 5. So we can say hence x equals 1 or negative 5, or 1 and negative 5. Alright, so we can come back up here to this method now, where we use the A, D, and E values. So let us establish again. A equals what here? In the equation, we're going to rewrite the equation here so it's easier. So it was 2x, using but the same equation to prove to you what we are doing. So 2x squared plus 8x minus 10 equals 0. In this equation, what is the A value? A equal to, what's the B value? Positive 8, and the C value is negative 10. Now we need to work out what is D and what is E. We said that D equals B divided by 2A. What is the B value here again? Positive 8, so that would give us positive 8 divided by 2 times, what is the A value? And we know 2 times 2 gonna give us, so then we will get 8 divided by 4 equals 8 divided by 4 equals 2. Alright. And then if we take our E value, we said that E equals C minus B squared divided by 4A. What is the C value in this question? Negative 10 minus B value is 8, so it's 8 squared over 4 times A value, which is, alright, so now we end up with negative 10 minus 8 squared is 64, and we know that 4 times 2 is 8. So now we can say it's negative 10 minus 64 divided by 8 is 64 divided by 8 is 8. So negative 10 minus 8 equals if you owe 10 and you owe 8, you owe 18. Very good. Anybody remembers where we had an 18 in our last solution? In this solution over here, so anybody remembers where we had the 18? Negative 9. All right, so we see right there why we have to multiply the factor by the c value, right? All right, let's just continue. So now that we know that a is, right, so we're going to rewrite this equation. So we're going to rewrite 2x is 2x squared plus 8x minus 10 equals 0 in the form a times x plus d all squared plus e. That's the format we want to rewrite it in. Let me write this a better in a second. All right. Now we said our a value was what? So we're just gonna substitute what we know, because we just finished the working out. So our a value was what again? 2. So it's 2 open brackets x remains the same. Our d value was what? Here our d value was 2, so it would be x plus 2 plus 2 all squared plus our e value, which was negative 18. So I'm going to put the negative 18 in brackets. Negative 18. Alright. Now, so it will leave us with 2 times x plus 2 all squared minus 18. Is that what we got over here when we did our other method? Can you see the similarities? Alright. So I just want you to see that there is actually a strategy to the short ways. I want you to know both ways, because I know some people like myself, if you don't understand how you get the negative 18, you will never remember to get the negative 18, right, Tony? All right. So no, I was saying that yes, that's okay. I was saying that I'm showing you guys that when we use the actual procedure, we get this exact response as when we use what I call the shorthand method. But I know that there are students who have a different learning style. So when I was doing math, my challenge was that my teachers never explained to me why we take the 2 and multiply it by the negative 9. So that's what I want you guys to see here, that when we use the formula for finding E, that's where we get the negative 18. So if you don't multiply, when you're using the shorthand method, if you don't multiply the number that you factored out by the constant, then your answer is going to be incorrect, because according to the formula, that's actually supposed to happen. Right? So, sorry? You okay, understood. Very good. All right, so I'm gonna ask, I know some persons had a challenge um solving for the values of x. So I just want you to take this 2 times x plus 2 all squared minus 18 and find the values of x. So you can get enough practice doing that. So do that quickly for me, please. Take this here, I'm going to underline it in red, equate it to 0, and find the values of x.